Hi, Stitchers. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, where we share conversations about Palestinian embroidery. I'm Amani, here with my co-host Lena, chatting with talented embroiderers and artists, sharing their stories, inspirations, and cultural significance behind their work.
On today's episode, we're chatting with our very good friend Samia, who is a Tatreez artist based in North Carolina with a very, let's just say, unique Instagram handle. But we'll talk about that later. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, Samia. We're thrilled to have you.
Hi, Lena and Amani. Very thrilled to be here to chat Tatreez today.
We're thrilled to have you. Lita's very, very excited to talk about your Instagram handle. But like she said, we'll get to that later. So, Samia, thank you again for taking the time to join us. We obviously, Lena and I, have met you through our Tatreez family. And so before we kind of jump in, though, we want to understand from you a little bit about your family and your connection to Palestine and your family's connection to Palestine.
Yeah, of course. So I was born and raised by two Palestinian parents who were born into the diaspora of Kuwait. Insert, you know,
Yep.
majority of Palestinian life here. But my dad's family is originally from Birzeit. My paternal grandfather's family is from Birzeit. And my paternal grandmother, she is actually from Jerusalem. So that's where they met. My grandpa actually lived there most of his life before going to Kuwait. And then my mom's side of the family is actually from Tabariya, so that region. So they were displaced in 48 in Jordan, and then later my grandparents went to Kuwait for work. So growing up, I didn't have that immediate connection to Palestine, although my parents instilled in me that connection and that sense of this is where you actually belong and this is where you shall, and this is where your roots are from the start.
Amazing. And you grew up in North Carolina, correct?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So yes, I was born and raised in North Carolina for the most part, but there was a little split in my childhood where every 6 months up until I was about the age of 6, we would go to Kuwait because my dad wasn't sure if he wanted to stay in the States or if he wanted to continue to live in Kuwait. So we'd have to go every 6 months because for those of you who don't know, if you are not a Kuwaiti citizen, or I mean, if you are not ethnically Kuwaiti, you cannot be a Kuwaiti citizen. So you had to maintain it through residency. So he was still balancing work with and whether or not for it to be in the States. So I had a lot of Arab influence growing up that way. Arabi is my first language. I didn't learn Arabi until I got to school in the States. So it's been an interesting way growing up, and we spent most of our summers every year going to the Blad, going to Kuwait and Jordan, and visiting all our extended family there. So I have very deep personal connection to the Middle East that way, and also being someone who was born and raised for most of her life in the United States to the States as well.
Yeah. So tell us about the introduction to Tatreez then. Was it something that you did with your family, or how did you first get introduced to it?
Yeah, so when I was about 5 years old, my paternal grandmother tried to teach me, and I will never forget this because it was the same kind of emotions that were elicited as a child when your parents try to tutor you in math. They give you this, they tell you do it, you tell them you don't understand, and then they get frustrated and you're left helpless and crying. So that's kind of how it started. It was basically she gave me an embroidery hoop with the cloth and real sharp needles and thread. I didn't know how to thread a needle back then. And she was like, "Here, do it. I'll watch me and you copy what I do." I'm like, "Teta, I don't know what this is." But I wanted to please my teta, so I kept trying and trying and trying until I had to come up to my mom and I was like, Mama, I really don't know what this is. I don't know what she wants me to do. I'm so nervous.
Baby.
And Mama was like, it's okay, chill. You don't have to worry about it. So that was my first introduction to Tatreez. And it,
5 is very young.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
don't feel
It
bad.
was.
5 is young.
Exactly. For sure.
So it didn't stick, I'm assuming. It didn't stick.
Unfortunately, it did not stick. It stuck. The needle stuck me, but Tatreez did not stick. But then, but then I started gaining more interest in actually learning it when, I was in college, and my, my peak, goal of like preserving the Palestinian like heritage and identity started flourishing, especially when I went to Palestine and Jordan in 2015. And I remember like going around asking my cousins, who do you know that does Tatreez? Who can teach me? Who can do this? And even going into shops and asking like, do you guys sell Tatreez material? I have no idea what it is. And it just didn't stick. I couldn't really find anyone who understood exactly what my request was. It was more, it was more people trying to get me to.
Sorry, Samia just had her cat come up and she just casually picks up the cat and just to the side
And you could hear the thump on the floor.
of the little cat's paws. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, cats.
Oh
Sorry.
my God. That
But
was
regardless,
hilarious.
like no one really understood what my goal was. I think, 2015,
That's so interesting.
there wasn't really a Tatreez boom. We can talk about
Yeah.
the Tatreez boom. And I feel like
Yeah.
I would equate it, I would kind of put it next to, or put it with 2020 and COVID.
Yeah.
But everyone was like, why do you want to do Tatreez? Like, you can just go to the shop next door and get some, and wear it. And I'm like, but that's not what I want. I want to like actually make my own and pass down something that's my own to others. But yeah, that was a flop. And it wasn't until 2019, where like I got married, I moved out of my parents' house, finally. And, and I was an hour and a half away back in like, I moved back to my college town. But it was a lot of change. It was like, it was a very like transitional period of my life. I was in a state of like constant change and I didn't feel like I was grounded in anything. And I also felt lonely because I had to kind of like restart rekindling a bunch of relationships again. And it took a lot of effort. And my husband and I, like, we sat down and we talked, and he told me I need to find a hobby and maybe something that I can do on my own, rather than depending on others to do it with me.
I love that advice, by the way.
It was the best advice he ever gave me. And he gave it to me straightforward.
Do you know why he came up with that? Do you know why he came up with that idea?
Yeah.
Like,
I can tell you
why the specific, like, alone thing? Yeah.
Because I am someone who craves constant connection for the most part, to the point where it's like, I think a lot of my before that time period of my life, a lot of my social interactions came from spending time with people. So whether it be like hanging out with my friends, I lived in an Arab household, so I'm literally never alone, even if I wanted to be. And just like, and I was a teacher, so my day job consisted of me being around 35 other people. So whenever I get the chance to be alone, I get uncomfortable. Like, I need to be with someone. I need to be doing something in public. So he was like, you need to be comfortable being alone. You need to be comfortable by yourself. And you need to do something to where you don't have to depend on someone else to be available for you to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm a big believer in that. So bravo to your husband for that advice. I think it's helpful advice for anyone.
Yeah, thank you. He's great. And he sat me down. He said, what is one thing you've always wanted to learn? And I said, Tatreez. And he said, okay, go figure out how to do Tatreez. I was like, all right.
I love it.
And look how simple it seems. And and it was so complicated to like think of that beforehand. It's crazy.
Yeah, like 2019, it wasn't that simple. Like I didn't know
Yeah.
how to
Very
spell
true.
Tatreez in English. I was spelling it Tatriz. So I didn't find anything. And then I'd get on YouTube and I'm looking it up, and no one, like, there were no videos. I didn't know that it was called embroidery. I knew it was embroidery, but I didn't know it was like specific to or similar to like American embroidery. I didn't know it was called cross stitch, any of that.
Yeah.
So finally, I turned on the Arabic setting of my keyboard and I wrote Tatreez on YouTube in Arabic. And I found this 2-hour long video. كتر خير هالمرة, like may God give this woman all the blessings. It was all in Arabic, and she was recording herself working on Tatreez on waste canvas too. And I soaked it up. I was like, this is how you do it. I just learned. I know exactly what cloth I need, everything. And I went to a craft store the next day and I got started. I found some random thobs and I found some patterns on my thobs. I found some random patterns online and I would just copy them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't until
who gave the YouTube video?
I never looked back to see who it was.
Do you have
but
the
I'll
link
definitely
though?
no.
Oh, I wonder.
But I'll look for it again. I won't forget that video because I watched all 2 hours of it.
Wow. Yeah.
That's impressive that she filmed 2 hours.
Yeah. So I'll definitely look back for it, and send it to you guys if I find it.
Yeah, and if she does find it, it'll be in the show notes for our listeners.
Definitely.
For sure. Yeah.
I actually really resonate with what you're talking about, Samia, because I started in 2018. It was the same thing. I couldn't find any resources. Like, it was so hard to find resources online, and it's a little easier now. It could be even easier. So we definitely want more Tatreezers to join the community. But from looking on YouTube, searching, and then finally finding it, and starting to learn, how did you begin to grow your practice?
I took to Instagram. So I remember I finally found Tatreez and Tea, Wafa's page, and it was the most popular, and it had the most followers in it, and she was posting all the resources, and I watched all her videos, looked through all her photos, read her blogs, found her book. And through that, I found more people to connect with and to follow. And when I started getting comfortable in Tatreez and actually comfortable enough to start sharing my work online, and it wasn't intended to be anything serious or anything that I was going to, try to build a following off of, just a presence to have. When I got my personal like Tatreez Instagram for myself, that's when I had like random people from the community reach out to me and tell me about certain things I can join, and online Tatreez circles I can join as well. So yeah, this was about 6 months into me practicing Tatreez.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I will never forget Yusr from Tatreezing reached out to me. She was like, OMG, I love your name. LOL. We'll get to that later.
The big build-up.
This will make the listeners listen to the whole episode.
And I said the same to her because I thought Tatreezing was genius. And
we love
through
Yusr.
that, yeah, we do. And I saw her do all these like random fundraisers through Tatreez and things like that, and I finally joined the Tatreez circle and met so many other people, and through that I found out about classes and cohorts, and what really grew my confidence and what really got me into Tatreez is joining the Thob Project's first cohort on building your own Thob, and that was a year into me practicing Tatreez. I was like,
that's wild.
It's 2020.
Very ambitious. I love it.
It was very ambitious. I was like, it's 2020. I'm not really doing anything anyways.
No one was.
Exactly. Let me learn how to make a thob. And I just jumped into it. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it built my confidence at such an accelerated pace. And it also taught me so much about how Tatreez is connected to our ancestral heritage and history. So I always tell people, if you learn Tatreez, you learn Palestinian history. Because they're intertwined with each other so intricately and so deeply that like one motif will tell you a whole story that will connect you to a part of the history or a part of a region. And then what I'd do is I'd find a motif that I'd love and I'd see this region and I'd just do a deep dive and learn all about the region. and then it makes sense. Okay, it makes sense why like Gaza has so many cypress trees on their thobes. It makes sense
Yeah.
why like Ramallah loves their reds and things like that.
Yeah, when you talk about the history, when I first started, I had mentioned before in a previous episode that I kind of just similar to you, where I wanted to pick up a hobby, and for me it was like about, let me just make beautiful things and beautify things through Tatreez, and then I started learning like, this is like layers, this is amazing, and you talk about the history, which I love. Where did you kind of start diving into learning the history, especially for people who are newer to Tatreez and haven't done that? Like, what advice would you give?
Buy those books, those Tatreez books, like Widat Kawar's book, Journey of Motifs, that one big book that just says like, I can't remember the name of
Hanan
it, but it
Munayyer?
has, yes, Hanan
Palestinian
Munayyar's
costume?
book. Yes, the
Yeah.
Palestinian costume. Just, save a few $100s and just buy all these books from Rimal Books, and just
I
read
get that.
into them.
I get that question a lot. Like, where do you get the books from? So I have a blog post that has like 12 books that I've gotten. So I'll include it in the show notes as well. But yeah, I'm glad that you learned a lot from those books because I also made that investment and it was so worth it. They're beautiful.
It is worth it. Yeah, they're beautiful table books. They're extremely, extremely like just intensely full of knowledge too.
And thoughtfully put together. Like
Yes.
so thoughtfully put together.
Yes. Yeah, very
Yes.
much so. I agree. I think these books are amazing. It's sad that some of them are out of print, but I know that hopefully we'll have some new books coming our way.
Yeah. And I think what's great here, I know I alluded to like the 2020 Tatreez boom, but since most of like from then, like most Tatreez classes switched to online, and there were a lot of people like you two and Badan and a bunch of other Tatreez accounts that have really dedicated to creating content on Tatreez and focusing more on the history of Tatreez and the history of motifs. So even like following these wonderful Palestinian Tatreez artists as well would teach you so much.
Okay, so remind us, what was the first project that you did when you first got into it?
Well, it was like a little square of the Star of Bethlehem. That was the first motif I've ever done. And then I think my first...
And then 6 months later, you did a thobe.
No. 1 year later, I started a thobe.
Okay, 1 year later. 1 year later.
1 year later,
Okay,
I started
1 year
a
later.
thobe. 6 months later, I think I made an unfinished pillowcase. I made... What else
We
did
all
I make?
have those unfinished projects. Oh my goodness, I have so many.
Oh my gosh, yes. And then once COVID hit, I remember like my biggest project was putting Tatreez on masks. Do you remember that era? Tatreez masks.
Yeah.
Yes,
So I did those, and I distributed I think I made 50 of them and sold them to the Raleigh
Wow,
community.
mashallah alayki.
Yeah.
50 masks? Did you sew the masks
it was a
also?
lot. No. I bought them from Old Navy.
Wow.
Yeah, but I
Samia,
didn't
I'm
even know where to
impressed.
get waist canvas from, so I was using Ida cloth as my waist canvas, and that was like 4 months
Oh my God,
into
on
Tatreez.
50 masks.
On 50 masks. It was horrible. Now I look back at it and I was
gosh.
like, oh my gosh, using Ida cloth.
Wow.
Do not recommend using Ida cloth as waist canvas. It takes
No,
so much
don't
more
do that.
time. Don't do it.
Wow.
But that's what I did.
Wow.
And yeah, I literally made at least 50 masks. I actually have my spreadsheet still saved on my Gmail, so I'll confirm later how many it actually was.
Well, no wonder you were ready for the thobe
Yeah.
after doing all that. That's a lot.
Seriously.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
I was going to say, you two can go from one motif to a thobe in 1 year if you are as dedicated as
Yeah,
Samia.
100%.
You really can. Yeah. I think, COVID had a lot of its bittersweet moments for me. Number one, it taught me how to be alone. And then number two, it got me even closer to Tatreez, which made me actually like being alone.
Yeah. So true. So true.
That's so funny. I also like being alone, but I don't mind being in community with other stitchers because then we could all just stitch together and everyone gets it.
Yeah. My favorite part is when you're stitching with people together in person, and then there's this 10 minutes of silence that just feels natural because everyone's focused.
Yes.
Or like when someone says, "Hey guys, can we just not talk for 5 minutes because I keep having to go back and recount this one row."
When there's comfort in the silence, like there's
yeah.
definitely comfort in the silence.
So
But in the silence together.
Yes, definitely. And kind of going in that, Samia, I know we have talked about it, and you are very passionate about like building community through Tatreez, even though we just talked about you loving being alone. But you do, you have taken an active part in building community locally. I know you do classes locally in North Carolina. You work with different colleges there. And then obviously you are a part of our larger Tatreez community. Lena and I both met you through the Tatreez community. So especially like locally, tell me a little bit about the community building that you've been doing and how that came about.
Yeah, it actually came about from, Ahdas Gaza on October 7th, like everything that's going on in Gaza on October 7th. A lot of people, frankly, were feeling, well, we know the collective feelings of frustration, feelings of hopelessness, and this huge feeling of like gaslighting and like having to prove that we deserve to exist and our humanity is something that needs to be preserved. And I think I noticed around me a lot of people that from everything that happened, they clung even tighter to their identity. Or they were very even like harder in their solidarity, and it felt like they needed more. And you know how it is, and it still feels like this. It's very hard for you to feel like you can be happy. It's very hard for you to feel like you can do anything without feeling guilty about it. Like, oh, I shouldn't meet up with my friends. I shouldn't do this activity for myself. So one thing that gave me comfort and allowed me to process all these very deep and hard emotions that I was experiencing was working on Tatreez and working on my thob. And I thought, let me take this opportunity to give whoever wants it or needs it that outlet of Tatreez locally for the people around me. And then let me also use it to my advantage to raise money for Gaza and send money to like the relief agency, like Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So that's what I did. I did a few Tatreez fundraisers. I partnered with some colleges, and I partnered with a collective that's local as well. And I was able to raise money that way and introduce the community to Tatreez. Along that, I was able to also like work with a youth group that asked me to go in, like a little girls, like 14-year-olds, and teach them Tatreez. That's an experience. It brought me back to teaching middle school. They kind of scared me too, to be honest with you. I was like, wow, how did I deal with 14-year-old kids for 5 years? someone explain to me,
I was going to say, you're the perfect person, though. You're like the best person for that, given your teaching experience.
Right. It was great. More power to them. Those people, they're going to be the future, and I'm very proud of their strong personalities. I love it.
Oh, good.
I did that, and so many people took off with it. I think I did all of that within. I don't even know how long the time span was.
I feel like you were doing like a lot. Yeah, it was like a 2-week
maybe
period.
Like 4
I feel
or 5.
like.
I'm probably going to do another one. I think it was like in a month time span, and people took off with it. They it's kind of like what I explained to you when I learned it. I learned it and I took off, and all of a sudden like I'm ready to make a thob before you know it. It clicked with them, and I get a lot of messages of like people saying this is how I wind down. This is my reflection. This is my processing. And slowly, like what I'm doing is I'm building up like a Tatreez, like a regular Tatreez circle within the community. That now that we have the numbers, we can do it. So I had a few of those, and every time we've met a couple of times, and every time we've met, they say like, this is great because it allows me to connect with my heritage, and it allows me to connect with, Palestinian people and people who are in solidarity with Palestine. and we can be together in a common ground, like a common understanding, while also like doing an active effort of like preserving our heritage. So my focus is now like looking at ways where we can utilize like I guess mobilize Tatreez and community into also like focusing and supporting our local like Palestinian businesses. So now our
Love
focus is
that.
that we're going to
Yes.
hold our circles in Palestinian and like Palestinian owned businesses. So last
Yes.
week we went to a dessert cafe, or not last week, last month we went to a dessert cafe. Next month we're going to another one that's Palestinian and Algerian owned. So I'm really looking
Yes, I
forward
love
to that
it.
as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So is there? It seems like there's a pretty decent community in North Carolina then, because I'm ignorant to that. Sorry, I am.
I
I
mean,
don't
now
know.
there is. There wasn't
Yeah,
before, but
there
now there
wasn't when you were
definitely
growing up.
now there yeah, exactly. Now there is for sure. So I'm looking forward to continuing to grow it, and for more like regularly practicing Tatreezers to get out there and do their thing.
Yeah, we'll have to do like I feel like we should do some type of like shared Google Doc
Yes.
for all these Tetris circles and all these events that happen. Because I tried to do a page on my website, and I'll be honest, it's just hard to keep up with everyone else because there's so many, which is amazing. And I know
Yeah.
there's always I get DMs. I'm sure you guys get DMs from people all over the country, literally all over the world, especially after October 7th, asking like, how can I be in solidarity? Or I'm Palestinian and I want to learn, I want to participate. So I love that you have been building that up locally. It's great to hear.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Of course.
It's
How
been
is
great.
Girl.
how is the transition to teaching? Like, did it come natural to you because you taught in the past, or?
Yeah, it did come natural to me. I will, so, I guess just a side note, last year I threw a little brunch with my friends, and
I remember
after the
that.
brunch I tried to teach them Tatreez, and thankfully through that was kind of my first introduction on how to
Yeah.
teach people Tatreez. There were some things that I just didn't think about, like telling people telling people to study the Ida cloth and see how it's a grid, and like to identify the boxes before they start like actually putting thread through it, and things like that. But yes, it was very natural. It came very natural to me, and it also like reminded me how much patience you need to be a teacher, and how much detail you need. I think detail more than patience, because everyone learns differently. I'm literally like a visual learner mostly, but some people they need detail, like you're going to take your thread. This is the exact like length that you're going to measure your thread.
Yeah.
You're going to
Yeah.
go from the back of the cloth. Like a lot of those things you think are like, especially practicing it for some time now, you think they're kind of common sense,
Yeah.
especially if you've at least like sewn a button before in a home economics class, but they're not. They're genuinely not. And it's just figuring out those details that you have to explain while people like are introduced to it for the first time is very important.
Yeah, I teaching is definitely a very specific skill because, like, as you know, like people, and as you just said, like people learn in different ways. I'm also very much a visual, like I like that hands-on, that like
Yeah,
seeing what I'm doing, so I can ask questions as I go along.
for sure.
Another question I have is like you've experienced the threes in different ways now, right? Like you've done your thob, you have built community, you've experienced that as a teacher as well. What are some of the biggest like lessons that you have learned from Tetris that have really stuck with you?
That okay, so number one, I think the biggest one that I had to teach myself really early is don't compare yourself to other people. And
Yes.
really focus on what your personal style is. There isn't, contrary to what it may look like, there isn't necessarily a one uniform fashion of what is considered Tatreez. I think, I remember like Wafa said this one time, that Tatreez is transformative and it should transform with you and with the times. So just focusing on how Tatreez should look like to you and what your personal style is, and even like what your speed of comfort and advancement is, will get you like to where you want to be so much faster than trying to race or trying to keep up with other people. Because like I said, I started only a year in, and some people that were in the cohort have been doing it since they were little with their parents. So I was like, oof, I need to catch up. I don't know enough. But in the end, I still got there, and I learned what I needed to learn from Tatreez. So just focus on yourself. Don't compare yourself to other people.
So that's a pretty powerful lesson.
Yeah. So then what is your style? What is your Tatreez style? Or like what motifs or colors are you typically attracted to?
I love reds. I'm a red girl. I try not to be.
She's a classic girl.
I am a monocolor classic girl. I try to be like the colorful pops, like those cobalt blues, but I'm very pastel, very muted. I love the floral prints. I'm not really a geometric girl. I'm more of a floral girl. So yeah, that I would say that's my go-to. Those are my focus: reds and flowers. Very it'll of me. So
I love it. I love it.
It's beautiful though. And to your point, what you just said, like everyone has different styles, and honestly, like I think everyone's styles is pretty beautiful. So it's hard to go wrong with the things. But maybe I'm biased about that.
No. Oh no, you're not biased at all. It's not a one size fits all. Like if it can be whatever you want it to be. And I think now I'm starting to get comfortable with like mixing it up with other stuff. So at first I was like, these motifs have to be from Palestine and have to be documented in this book, or it's not Palestinian Tatreez. And I'm like, well, if it's a pattern that I'm gonna put with Palestinian Tatreez, it's Tatreez. If it's a pattern that I'm gonna make up, it's Palestinian Tatreez because it's made up by a Palestinian.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
All the snaps. Yes. So tell us a little bit more about this. I love the mixing. It's something I want to get into, like doing mixed medium art with Tatreez. Like, what are you mixing with your Tatreez now?
I have a lot of ideas, but I haven't really done
Same
it.
Girl, same.
I guess one thing that comes to mind is like when I first started, I liked, and I did a few things of these as like gifts. Is I like to add like a focal point. I did a lot of like graduation presents. So one of my first big projects was a graduation present to my best friend, who became an audiologist. And what I did is I stitched an ear, and then I did Tatreez around it. So that's
so cute.
Or someone else graduated, so I did. We're in North Carolina. They graduated from UNC to the Tar Heels. Like I did the well from UNC Chapel Hill, and I did a Tatreez border with the Damascus flowers around it. Another person graduated from NC State, and I did their hat, and I put a wolf on it because NC State's the cap, and the NC State because NC State's mascot's the wolf. So just like mixing that, it's kind of like it's a connection between your heritage and what
your experience,
your Arab American culture. Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. So if anyone needs any graduation gear, hit up Samia. Or don't. She's saying do not. She's giving me a no.
Yeah. If you really want it, hit me up 12 months in advance and remind me 6 months before, because that takes time. I did my sister's stole, like the thing that they put on their shoulders for graduation. Whew, that was a beast. It was as if you're like doing side panels and you don't realize that. I think like one thing everyone learns as soon as they pick up Tatreez is it takes so much time. It takes so much time. Like if one Star of Bethlehem takes me 45 minutes, and then you look at a thobe that has like 200 Stars of Bethlehem, you're like, okay, I'll pay $2,000 for this. No questions asked.
Yep.
I mean, I won't like when I can, but like I will not haggle the price of a thobe after being after like knowing what it takes to like actually make one.
100%. Only people who Tatreez know this, though.
Yeah,
I feel like it's really hard to help someone understand it when they don't actually have to go through the process of threading their needle and like stitching the way. Yeah,
exactly.
I've said this before, but every time I take a piece to my framer, he's like, "How long did this take?" And I'm like, "It took me 8 months." And he's like, what? But yeah, people don't get it unless you actually stitch. But yeah, it's still a beautiful process, as we all I think know and agree on.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
Samia, our listeners don't know this. We haven't mentioned it, but a little one is on its way. Do you have any plans? Are you planning on teaching him? Are you going to be creating things? You already have ideas for what you're going to make with Tatreez on it?
Yes. So many. I'm thinking suspenders or some sort of overalls with Tatreez.
Oh my God, yes.
so
Please,
cute.
You know.
please. And send us pictures.
Please.
Oh, for sure, I will. And yes, I will definitely be teaching him Tatreez. Tatreez has no gender. He is going to be a Palestinian Lebanese little man who will
Yes.
have a thread, who will have his needle and thread in his cloth.
But don't teach him like your teta. Be careful.
Yeah, don't traumatize him. Ease him into it.
Own in on that teaching experience. Remember.
Exactly. I'll have to see when he's ready. I'll wait till he's 7 instead of 5.
Go.
I feel like 5's a little too early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. My mom just came back from Saudi, like from visiting her sisters, and they bought him a dishdashe. So I'm like, putting Tatreez on that.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
Oh my gosh, how big is it? Is it for a newborn?
Yeah, when can we get a photo shoot?
It's not for a newborn, but I do plan on like looking at it and gonna try to maybe actually sew a newborn one up and see if that could fit.
So cute.
You should still put him in the big thobe.
Yes,
the big stash.
Yeah.
And do like
least for
monthly updates with how big he's getting.
Yes, until he properly fits into it.
fits in the thumb. I
Yes.
love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boom.
Okay.
Look at
I
us
need to stitch
brainstorming
that
baby
thobe now.
content.
I love it.
So good. I love that so
Yeah.
much.
So
Okay, I'm so excited for you. It's gonna be
you.
it's gonna be beautiful.
If you or any of the listeners have any names, any name suggestions,
Ooh,
please
we'll do a
send them
poll.
my way.
We'll do a poll.
Yeah.
Oh yes, let's do a poll.
Yeah.
Please do,
Absolutely.
because
Put
we're
that
struggling.
on IG. Do you guys? Is there any like names in particular that you're drawn to right now, or any that you hate?
Any that I hate. I don't hate any of the names.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe not hate, but
there's
any
like
that you
a
don't
few
want.
names. There's like a few names that I love, but I just can't do it because former teacher me will like think of this kid. You know, no offense.
Yeah.
I hope they're doing great, but it's just like like I can't name Mustafa because like I lost hair.
You still want to fight Mustafa?
I still want. I hope he's thriving. I hope he's almost like I think it's his sophomore year of college now. Allah wafak Mustafa. Like, but I'm not.
goodness.
That can't follow me into like so.
I hope he listens to this.
I do too.
There's another kid like Yassine, man. I loved Yassine, but dude, like I don't know. I just can't name Yassine. So
Oh, I love that name.
I love that name too. But like he would come
trauma,
into school
I get it.
and like he would be like, "Oh, I need a piece of paper." And I'm like, "Yes, Yassine, you need a piece of paper to do math. Can you please like get yourself together?"
See, that's why I can't mess with kids. Kids scare me.
And they're sassy, They have
yeah.
no shame. Oh my goodness.
No, they
Yeah.
don't, especially when they're in middle school. So
Yeah.
yeah, some names are off limits just
fair
due
enough.
to that part of my life, but
Fair enough.
That's that makes sense. Samia, before we head out, is there anything else you want to share with the listeners?
just that like I said easier, like have some grace when you're learning Tatreez and when you're doing your Tatreez journey. You can be practicing for, for me, I guess 4 years now, and you'll still have to go back and undo an entire row, and that's
Yep.
okay. Be patient with your knots. And
Yes.
Tatreez, the community of Tatreez is just as beautiful as the artwork that comes out of it. So like engage in your community, reach out to other people, and spread it to all our Palestinians and those who are in solidarity and with us as well.
Yeah. So if you're in North Carolina, you're going to have to join Samia's local Tatreez community.
For sure.
Okay, I think everyone has been waiting for this moment. Samia, it's time. please reveal your Instagram handle.
So people can follow you and giggle.
So, another tidbit from my wise husband. I asked him about the Tatreez handle, and I said, is this immature? Is this inappropriate? And he said, it's probably not the best look for you to be like, to put that as like the first thing that people like read your name as. And I said, whatever, who's going to be reading my name anyway? I'm just a nobody posting random Tatreez photos. Like, my friends are going to be the only ones following this. But I will say it's an ode to my Arab American upbringing, especially if you were a teenager in the early 2000s. My Instagram is EDB Tatreez E. So if you're not sure where that comes from, just write the letters E, D, B, T, and Z on a paper and say it out loud, just like I did.
Yeah. As all corny Arab American kids did at one point.
Oh, yeah. I feel like it was that joke and the Lahma song.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Oh, my God. The Lahma song just unlocked a memory. Wow. Oh my God, that's hilarious. So, okay, we'll put Samia's Instagram handle in the show notes, but definitely give her a follow. And of course, if you are local, go to one of her Tatreez circles, take one of her classes, and definitely engage with her. Thank you so much for being here, Samia. We love chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved being here and chatting with you guys about all things Tatreez.
Of course. We'll have to have you back with the baby when he has a little needle and thread in his hand.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I love the monthly pictures now, too. So I will definitely be incorporating that. So just take a look.
Yes.
Be on the lookout on my Instagram.
Cannot
so
wait to see the little nugget. Amazing.
Too.
Thank you, Samia. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Amazing. Another incredible conversation. I love Samia.
She's the best. I'm so grateful that we met her. And I cannot wait to see her little baby boy stitching.
I know. I'm so excited. So excited for her. Babies in the Tatreez world.
Seriously. Okay, we're definitely going to have to do a little poll and ask the listeners for opinions on baby names for Samia's little boy. I would love if our little Tatreez community names her son. I would die.
Imagine. You think her husband thought this would come out of that one conversation, that one piece of advice he gave her?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I said it when we were chatting with her, and I'll say it again. I do think that is such helpful advice. Like, I am a firm believer in like the fact that you need to be very comfortable alone and with yourself before you can be comfortable with other people. And I'm really glad that Samia found that through Tatreez. And even though, she found it as a hobby to do solo, she also found community through Tatreez, which, we love. We say it all the time, but we love the Tatreez community and what comes out of it.
Yeah, I think that's also what's so magical about Tatreez is like it has the perfect balance of like being true to yourself, showing your own individuality, your own personality, but then at the same time, you can connect so deeply with not just like people who are doing it with you, but literally an entire nation, I guess, an entire people across time too.
Yeah.
Like that's what's so magical about it is it's like the most perfect art form.
Yeah. Well, I love what you just said. It's like you're connecting with people across time, because that's true too, right? Like Samia talked about when she first started stitching in 2018, like it was hard to find resources. Like a lot of the books that we love, they're really hard to find, which we know because we literally had to track them down. And when we would find one available, we would text each other and be like, guys, jump on this book now before it's sold out. But like, looking at these books, whether you're copying pictures of old thwab or just using these old traditional patterns or motifs within the patterns that you create, like you're still connecting with a different time. You're still connecting with our ancestors. And I think that's beautiful. Like when I first started Tatreez as well, like I remember one of my really good friends is from Gaza, and his mom had come back from Gaza and she bought a bunch of pillows and she was showing me because she knew I had just started, like I was still fairly new in my Tatreez journey. It was before COVID. It was probably like 2019, I think maybe. And she brought all these pillows back and I took pictures of them and I was like, I'm going to copy these pillows. And that's kind of how I started, and was like, oh, okay, this is how you build a pattern that way. So you're still learning from your ancestors. You're still learning from people back home when you're in the diaspora. Like Tatreez truly does connect us all, which is really special.
And I think actually one thing that you mentioned that struck a chord for me is, you know, even if you don't have access to these books, like you don't need something to be published for you to have access to this. Because if you have a thwab at home, that's actually the source of Tatreez. Like that should be where you go to first, because it just like spend some time with those dresses or like those pillows like you had. Just spend some time and just look at them and admire them, because that's what they're there to be like looked at for, you know. And I feel like we didn't even like when people teach you nowadays, I feel like that's still something that's a little bit not discussed as much as like you should like give them the attention, because they're worthy of your attention. They're worthy of your time, and just, you know, feel the threads that are stitched on the fabric, and, you know, use that as a starting point, because really it's that's part of the preservation, right? It's like actually returning back to the pieces that are already made and that we have at our disposal.
Yeah, like our ancestors did not have patterns, you know. I like patterns because I'm a planner and I like to meticulously plan everything out.
100% understand.
I'm a little extra, but that's the thing. Like to your point, like our ancestors didn't have patterns. Like my hajja wasn't stitching with no patterns. She didn't have Etsy. They were stitching from memory. They were stitching from inspiration of other people's work. Even I know we'll have her eventually on the podcast, but our friend Qadi, you know, she's working on her own thob, and she is replicating the Intifada thob that Yasser Arafat's wife wore. So the second Intifada thob, and she is replicating that. And her sister-in-law was recently in Palestine and found one already stitched, a hand-stitched one that she bought her. And so a few weeks back, I was at her house and she was showing me hers that she's stitching. That's an exact replica from a picture versus the one that this other woman in Palestine stitched. And there is different, like, you know, there's differences. So you can tell, but you can tell this woman was inspired by the original. But again, she didn't have a pattern. So she was kind of copying from memory and making it her own. And it's really interesting to see that, because then, it's the story being retold in a different way, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Tatreez Talk. We want to hear about your Tatreez journey. Share your stories with us. We're here to listen to them. You can reach us at tatreeztalk@gmail.com, and we might have you on an entire episode for yourself as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite listening platform, and be sure to leave a 5-star review. You can follow me, Lena, at Lena's Thob, and Amani at Min Amani, and make sure you follow the pod at Tatreez Talk. We'll talk to you later, Stitchers.